Hello there, fellow Gateballers. Today we'll be discussing Chapter 4, How to Play the Game, which is which has Article 6 in it, How to Play the Game, the exact same name. So, without further ado, we'll begin the presentation, but first we'll mention that this series is proudly endorsed by Gateball Australia, and all figures and references have been taken from the World Gateball Union's publications. So let's get right into it. So we're going to discuss Clause 1, which is the formality of the game. The game is played between two teams with 5 players on each team. Relatively straightforward. Once the game is started, the players play according to the player order, with the players of the leading team and the following team playing alternately until the end of the game. That's relatively straightforward, as we know. The leading team, the red team, will play, and then the white team shall play, and then the red team again, and then the white team until time has elapsed. Clause 2 is labelled the duration of the game, and this only has one dot point, and it says the duration of the game shall be 30 minutes. 30 minutes is the standard amount of time used for a gateball game, and as such is set out here in the game rules. Clause 3 is labelled the start of the game, and for that one we're going to need figure 4 in our rule books. And figure 4 is this one here, and it states under dot point 1, the game will start upon the chief referee calling play ball. Dot point 2 states at the beginning of the game, the starting players will line up in the free zone outside the 4th line in order from the 1st player to the 10th player. And that's what this figure is used for. As we know, this little shaded box here is the start area. This is gate 1, and we can see gate 3 here. This is the 4th line, and this is the 1st line, meaning that this is the 1st corner. And we also made reference in Article 1, the court, about the free zone. So you can see that the players here, these numbers in circles representing the players, note that the rules state that only the starting players are required to line up at the beginning of the game, and that means only the players who are playing balls, not the substitutes in this sense, do not have to line up in this arrangement. And we can see that they are 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and through 10, alternating so that the game may progress easily. That is the placement at the start of play. Right on to clause 4, and we can see it's labelled end of the game. And dot point 1 says the game will end upon the chief referee calling game set. And we will go into exactly how to perform the play ball maneuver, which has actually been changed as of 2019 by the referee, as well as the game set, which is at the end of the game. And that will be in the guide for referees section at the end of the game rules section. And we can see dot point 2 says the game time shall end after 30 minutes from the start of the game. So the moment the chief referee calls play ball, a timer is started, or in some tournaments, a central timer is used, which will make a sound, usually a bell, and that will indicate to the chief referee to start the game. That system is used so that all of the games going on at one time, say you've got 12 games going on at the same time on 12 different courts, that they all start at exactly the same time. And that's when that 30 minutes starts. And it says under that same dot point, the game shall end when the following takes place. So these technically 3, 2.5, sorry, I'm getting my words tangled up, points are relevant to when the game actually ends. And number 1 says, if the game time ends after a player from the leading team, which is the red team, has been called to stroke, and before the next player from the following team has been called to stroke, the game will end when the rights as a stroker under Article 9, Clause 1, which we will go on to in a future video, end for the next stroker from the following team. Now, that's a little bit of a mouthful to say as well as to understand. So we're going to break it down. If the game time ends, when does the game time end? The game time ends when the bell rings, or the central bell rings, or the chief referee on the court using the centralized timer, or his wrist timer perhaps, or whichever timer is agreed upon at the beginning of the game ends, time will be announced instantly as having ended. And we move on, and it says, after a player from the leading team. So if time has gone after a player from the leading team has been called to stroke. So say ball number 3 was playing, and they've been called to stroke. And then it says, and before the next player from the following team has been called to stroke, which means before ball 4 has been called to stroke, because ball 3 is the leading team and ball 4 is the following team. The game will end when the rights as a stroker end for the next stroke from the following team. Now, what does that mean? That means that after ball 3 has finished all of its turns, or its rights as a stroke have ended, which we will explore in a future video, but I'll briefly explain it here. That means he's either run out of shots or he's committed a foul. Then once ball 4 has completed their turn, the game will end. That's the very basic explanation of it. So we're just going to look at quickly 1 in the circle, just under dot point 1, and it makes reference to the fact of what happens in certain cases in relation to the following team playing. So we were discussing ball 3 as being the leading team and ball 4 being the following team. So this little bit of a confusing dot point has to do with the following team's play. And I'll read it to you first and then I'll explain it. And it says, if in a previous play by the next stroker from the following team has resulted in an out ball, a finish, or an agari, or the player is absent, the game will end when the rights as a stroker end for the stroker from the leading team. Now, this is one of the few situations in which the game ends on the leading team's turn, technically speaking. So, what does that little section of jargon mean? Well, it means that should time be called during ball 3, which is during the following team's turn, that could be 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9, but we'll use 3 for this example. Should time be called during 3's turn and the rights as a stroker end for the player of ball number 3, then should the white ball be an out ball, i.e. should ball number 4 be an out ball, the game ends. Should ball number 4 be an agari, meaning it has finished the game and has hit the goal pole and been removed from the court, the game has finished. And finally, the game will also instantly end if the player is absent. That means that the player of the the player of the ball number 4 is absent. We'll discuss that just in this same video, just a little bit further on. Right. And the very last condition is in relation to what happens if time is called when the following team is playing. And that is that should time be called when player 4 is in play, the game will end. And I'll just read, that's the basic explanation, but I'll read you the rule, which is dot point 2, and it says, if the game time ends after a player from the following team has been called to stroke, and before the next player from the leading team has been called to stroke, the game ends when the right as a stroker end for the stroker from the following team. And that means should number 4 or should numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10 be playing when time is called, the game will end when their rights as a stroker finish. And again, I will discuss what the rights of the stroker are in a following video, which will be under Article 9. Right, so that's how the game ends. We're going to be moving on to clause number 5, and we'll be reviewing ball numbers. And clause number 5 is labelled playing order and the ball. And dot point 1 says the playing order of the players is from 1 to 10. So, obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, perfectly. Dot point 2 says, players shall be each given their own ball, the number of which shall correspond to the playing order number. So when we submit the playing order sheet, you will be, whether the captain chooses to lead or follow if they win, you will be assigned a number relevant to your position on the playing order sheet, which will also correspond to your bib. Going on, it says that the ball which corresponds to the stroker's playing order number is referred to as the stroker's ball. Now, this is very important for future rules, knowing which ball is the stroker's ball. The stroker's ball is the ball which they own. When I say own, it is the number that is referenced on the playing order sheet at the beginning of the game, and is also the number which is printed on their bib. Moving along, it says the 9 balls other than the stroker's ball are referred to as the other balls. This is also incredibly important. Should I be playing number 5 on the odd side, the red team, all of the other 9 balls are considered the other ball or balls, whether we're talking about one or multiple, and that is also incredibly important for future articles in the rules. We're going to move on to clause 6, which is, I believe, the second last one. I'll just have a quick check. Yes, it is. And clause 6 is in relation to the substitution of players. Now, this one can be slightly confusing. I'm just going to read through it and not really explain very much, because I want you to go read the Q&A on this one, and that lays out exactly step by step with images how substitution should occur. And really, it's quite simple. But we're just going to read it as is in the rules. And it says, the substitution of players refers to when a player is replaced with a substitute. Remembering that substitutes must be agreed upon and written on the playing order sheet before the game starts, and they must be present at the referee inspection. And under dot point 1, the number 1 in bracket says, once the playing order sheet has been submitted, each substitute player on the playing order sheet can only replace a player once one of the following happens. A substitute will assume the playing order of the replaced player. So should a substitute be replacing ball number 3, the player of player number 3, they will substitute with player number 3, and they will assume the playing order bib and ownership of that ball, making it their stroker's ball. Number 2. A player who has been substituted may not rejoin that game. So, should I be playing ball number 5 and be substituted with a substitute from my team, I cannot rejoin the game after that substitution has been made. Number 3, if the fact that a substitute player has been playing without indicating the substitution was found out before the stroke or foul play of the next stroker has been made, the play shall become ineffective. What does that mean? That's a little bit of a complicated one. Well, it's very simple, really. It means that should the captain not announce the fact that he wishes to indicate that he wishes to substitute a player, and instead just substitute them without informing the recorder, then all the plays made by that stroker shall become ineffective. And just to make matters worse, time will still be counted down after the balls have been replaced, because if play has been ineffective, the balls must be replaced before the ineffective play was committed. Therefore, the 10-second time over rule may be applied, because the player who was substituted, so the substitute who was improperly substituted, must exchange bibs and get the correct equipment to the player who was the owner of the ball, so that they may play the stroke as intended. But remember, they only have 10 seconds to do as such, and it's incredibly difficult. Number 2, in brackets there, says the substitution shall be approved as follows. So this is the process. Number 1, the manager shall indicate the substitution to the recorder. So the manager must indicate the substitution to the recorder, not the chief referee, not the assistant referee, but the recorder, and that's very important. Number 2, the recorder confirms the substitution and advises the chief referee of the substitution. So it is the recorder's role to ensure that he informs the chief referee of the incoming substitution. Number 3, the chief referee approves and announces the substitution. That's as simple as that. Dot point 3 says the substitution will not be approved in the following cases. If the substitution is indicated after the player who will be substituted has stroked as a stroker, but before his or her rights as the stroker have ended. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that you basically can't substitute a player who's already been called to stroke the ball in the game. But it also says that before the rights as a stroker have ended. So it's just absolutely framing that time in which you are not allowed to announce a substitution. So, should ball 5 be called to play and they have stroked their ball, they are no longer eligible to be replaced by a substitute. And that is all the way up to the point at which ball number 5's rights as a stroker have ended, which also includes them having committed a foul. And that's all that that dot point is relating to. Number 2. If the substitute player is not wearing the appropriate playing order number when the player who will be substituted is called to stroke. So that means that the substituted player must be wearing the correct order number or bib number that they wish to be substituted with. And the very last clause is clause number 7, and that's absence of players. You remember I was talking about that in relation to the end of the game. Well, dot point number 1 says, should a player become absent from a team during the game, the following shall apply. Number 1, the player must immediately be reported to the referee by the manager. Sorry about that, bit of a tongue twister for some reason. Dot point 2, the playing order of the player who has become absent will be an absent number, and the game will continue without that player. So, should number 2, the owner of number 2, become absent from play, the playing of ball number 2 shall be treated as nothing having happened. And it followingly says, under number 1 of that same dot point, the ball of the absent player shall remain as in the game. So other players may use that ball as they wish or see fit. Any points having been made by the absent player's ball through the play of the other players shall be valid. So, should number 2 be missing, but the number 2 ball be sparked through its next gate in order, that point will count for number 2 and will collate towards the white team's score. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's incredibly short article number 6, under chapter number 4, which is how to play the game. We hope to see you on a court sometime soon, and let's play ball.